I was in this social business competition with Bill Clinton, with about 25,000 students all over the world. And the goal was basically for students to create these social enterprises. So President Clinton sets a challenge every year, and then as a student in at your campus, you get in groups and then you create a business to respond to this challenge to solve like a global problem. So what we did, our year was all about connecting people to goods, services, and resources. And so we chose transport as kind of an overlooked social good, because if you can get improved transport, you can improve their access to jobs, to work, to school. So in 2016, ended up winning that $1 million competition. And since then have been on a journey with had some other cool opportunities open up with entrepreneurship, with pitching with a Google program in the States. We came in second place at Seed Stars here in Nairobi. So have done a lot of pitching and revamping. So we were in an accelerator program. So much like what you guys are doing, we had about 2.5 months of this accelerator program. So we were pitching every week and revamping and changing things before we won. And this picture here at the bottom is that was that was in March at regionals. So that was before we won. So the reason I put that picture there was because even though we won this awesome prize, and our pitch got to be like pretty cool, where we started was terrible, and we came a very long way. At regionals, we actually got cut off. We did not finish in time. We had probably maybe 3 minutes of our pitch that we did not complete because we hadn't practiced with the right timing. We were using note cards. If I had something to show you of that, I would, but I'm just painting the picture for you. The struggle was real, and the pitch was quite shaky. But we had people that believed in the seeds of our idea and where it could go and where it could scale to. So what I want to help you guys do today is how to craft your pitches. So it was great to hear. It was really good actually to hear where you guys are at. It's really cool to see. I think a lot of you guys are getting really good openings, starting with something that really pulls people in. We're starting to see the threads of stories come through. So I think that's awesome. You guys have it looks like you have a pretty clear sense of what your businesses are doing. So what I'm going to do is let me show you what I had prepared, and then we can kind of tweak this. So I don't really know fully what you guys have gotten up till this point. So I want to make sure that I'm helping you with what's most useful to you. So one of the things that we're going to add in is closing. I noticed a lot of us did not have that strong close that ends with an oomph and a bam, where it's just like that drop mic moment where it's like, that was a good pitch. First we're going to start with foundations of storytelling. So this is all about how do you actually shape your story, what is memorable about a story, and why do we need to use them? Why do we use them for our pitches? And then there's different types of pitches. One of them will be like that high concept pitch, and so we'll go through an exercise where we'll each go through and you'll just basically say at a high level, this is what I do, and it's going to really help you boil down, get really clear about what you do and why you do it and how you do it. And then we'll talk a little bit about the different parts of a pitch. I saw a lot of you guys, a lot of you had the order down in terms of kind of the standard way that you go through things so that it makes sense for your audience. So we'll touch on that. And then I will share with you guys tips around how I prepped for these pitches and what did that actually look like as we were staying up late at night and doing 16, 18-hour days to prepare. And then we will talk about a little bit about like actual pitching techniques. So that'll be like your body language, your tone, your pace, how you're actually delivering what you're saying, how you're moving around the stage, all of that. Does that sound like a good plan to people? Cool. When you guys think about, stories have been used throughout history, you know? We started with oral traditions of people would used to like pass the history down just by telling stories. And that was, they didn't have history books, but that was how the stories got told and the history got shared. And stories, like you said, are a great way to engage with your audience because stories can cause like a physical reaction. You know, when you hear a really powerful story, sometimes you might get chills, or you might like it might really click in your brain, or your heart starts racing. Like sometimes when you hear a really powerful story, you respond, right? Like your body has a reaction. So that's something we want to keep in mind is like when we're telling the story, or telling our pitch / our story to our audience, is we want to be connecting with them. We want to be engaging with them. Stories can make you question things, challenge your original assumptions that you had. So that's something that you may want to think about. You may want to think about challenging the assumptions that your audience has. And like, oh, well, traditionally we've seen this as a problem, but there's actually a huge opportunity here to be able to like, for example, with the kids, there's a huge opportunity to grow the next generation of African scientists. Like, so phrasing, you could potentially look at rephrasing your problem in the light of an opportunity, because then it also opens with a positive spin on things. Okay, so good pitching basically is all about, getting really good at storytelling. As you're pitching, one of the things that will help you be more confident when you're pitching is not only being prepared, having like practiced your pitch, you know where the transitions are, you know you've prepared how you're going to answer the Q&A, but you need to know your stuff. So you need to know your numbers, you need to know your growth, you need to know what your future projections are, what your future vision is, how are you scaling, what impact do you want to see? Because other people, when you're up here, you're the expert. So you have to own the stage. So it's your story that you're putting forth, and the audience is going to believe like what you're telling them and what you're presenting to them. So you have to be clear on, this is my business, this is the market size, this is my vision, and this is how we're going to get there. And so it's up to you to know exactly what those things are. Okay, so I want you to keep, at the back of your mind, I want you to keep your favorite presenter in mind because it's useful for you to know what you're going towards, right? So if you know that Barack Obama gives these really powerful, captivating, emotive like speeches that get people going like, yeah, like let's do that. They get on board, they get pumped. Then you can take some of those tactics as you're pitching and be able to incorporate them into your pitch. So if you're not watching people talk, like if you're not watching people pitch, watching startup competitions or Shark Tank, how many people watch Shark Tank? Okay, good. A good majority of us. Shark Tank is a really useful thing that will help you craft your pitch because you can start to pick out and see the trends and patterns of like, that works, that doesn't work. They're going to call them on that because they don't know their numbers and they're just saying something and they don't really have anything to back it up. So it's like really good to help you look at that. So there's good pitches are, they are 5 main things. They are memorable, so you should remember them. So you want to do something that makes you stand out. Okay, so memorable. They are compelling. So it makes you want to do something or be involved. When you're pitching to investors, obviously the compelling bit is you want them to give you money. So if you're not inspiring them to action and to want to invest in you and invest in your vision, then you're not gonna get what you want at the end of the day, which is funding or connections or whatever it is that you're looking for. They're authentic. So great pitches are about you being you confidently. So you don't need to be Steve Jobs, you don't need to be Barack Obama. You can take some of the tactics that they use, but you should be yourself, and you should be confident in yourself, and it should come across to the audience that, oh, I understand a bit about this person, I see what drives them, I see what motivates them, what their passion is, and why they're doing this. So you want to be yourself. And then the fourth thing is they're easily shareable. So when you're thinking about your story that you told me that you shared with someone, the reason you wanted to share it with someone was because it was easy to remember, right? Like, I saw this article about, it was in the States, but this guy there was this homeless man that had been digging through the trash. And then the restaurant put a sign on the door and said, whoever's digging through the trash, you're a human being, please just come in and have some pizza, no questions asked. And so, what makes that memorable, that story is memorable. It's something that stands out. You remember the sign on the window. It's compelling because it's reminding you about your common humanity and the power of kindness. It was true to them. It was very much just, they weren't offering chicken because it was a pizza restaurant. So they were true to themselves. And then it's something that people can get on board with and share and tell another person about. So when you are pitching, and as founders, you're always pitching. So it may not be on a stage, but every time you're meeting someone, every time you're interacting with them, you're pitching yourself. So when we do the high-level concept, the handshake tagline pitch, which is a very short, it's exactly what you say after you introduce yourself. So you're pitching at that moment. And you want to be someone who is making people remember who you are and what you're about. So the way someone explained it to me was, so it's like you have, so you have a bunch of dots and your brain is constantly trying to make the connections and connect the dots between the things, right? So your brain is always trying to say oh, that's the person she works on buses in Africa and ticketing. That's the person that works on high-end fashion. So you want to help make it easy for people to connect the dots for you. So when you show up to pitch, that's something that you want to think about. What are those key things that are coming across? Okay, so we talked about this. Easily shared. So you want to make it so short and concise that someone can share your idea. You actually want to make other people be advocates for you. So, for example, I once was in this leadership workshop, and we did this activity that we may do. But we paired up and we introduced ourselves to someone within 1 minute, and then they had to introduce us to the room. And so you want to be so clear on what you're saying, who you stand for, what you're about, that someone else can then become your advocate and say, if they're in a conversation with someone and they're talking about agriculture, then they can say, oh, you need to talk to this person because that's exactly what she's doing. So that's kind of, just keep that at the back of your mind if that's where we're going. So so it's all about your why. So starting with your why is, this is the thing that completely changed our pitch for the finals. Up until we had before we got to the finals, we were just talking a lot about the what and how we do it. But the thing is that people actually care about the why. That is your why. Yes, because you just said the reason that you're for this is because you want parents to be able to put their kids in school. You want parents to be able to afford to send their kids to school. Farmers. You want farmers to be able to send their kids to school. Is there anything else in there Like anything else, any other why?
Basically, it's for them to have decent lives.
Okay.
And to afford the basic necessities of life.
Okay. So kind of like restoring dignity and like allowing them to live.
At the rural setting.
Okay. Okay. So you want rural farmers to have the rights to live well.
Exactly.
That is your why.
Now I know what my why is.
Awesome. Go ahead.
Okay. My why, to create impact by providing opportunities for vulnerable village-based communities to be self-sustaining and sustainable through self-employment.
And why do you care about that? Why is it a problem for you? Why is it so painful to you when you hear this problem that it's something that you want to solve? Like, what do you believe about the world that should be fixed in that problem? So there's principles of persuasion. So you can look it up. It is a book by, let me see what the guy's name is. I don't remember. But basically, this pathos, ethos, and logos, these are devices that you can intentionally use to tell a good story. So basically, pathos is, it's kind of, so pathos is what we were talking about. So that is what Simon Sinek was talking about your why. What is your why? So pathos is all about building empathy. It's about creating an emotional connection with your audience. And it tugs on their heartstrings. So you always want to have that as part of your pitch. Ethos is what you do to build credibility. So it shows people you're the one to do it, you know what you're talking about, there's research to back you up, there's organizations supporting you. Logos is basically the what. So logos is like, how are you going to do it? What's the plan? So you want to, for example, like this is just another way of looking at it. So pathos is all about heartwarming stories. It's when you were sharing about the person who was sharing about the friend who had committed suicide. That gets your heart engaged. That is like, oh my gosh, like I've had a friend that has gone through the same thing, or I've gone through that same experience. Whatever it is, pathos is your story. It's getting people's heart involved. So you can use personal experiences. You can use other people's experiences. You can use jokes. You can use like a story that's really, or a picture that's really funny that's going to connect with your audience. Logos. Actually, no, sorry. These ones aren't in order. So the order that we want to do is pathos, ethos, logos. So ethos is basically building up your credibility and trust. So I saw a lot of you guys, which is awesome. You guys were talking about, the UN has said this, or the stat by this research organization is X, whatever it is. So all of those things are building your credibility, where it's not just you saying something on your own and people are like, I don't really believe you. Like, is there any truth to what you're saying? So you want to add ethos into your presentation, kind of like in layers, so that it's actually building credibility for what you're saying. And then logos is the last bit. So that is logic. So that's examples, that's stats, that's arguments. So it's very like logical. And this is also, when you think about it, in your audience, you have different personality types. You have different people that think in different ways. Some people are very emotional. Some are very like, give me the stats. If you don't tell me the stats, it's not true. So this helps you touch on each bit of those that will resonate with all of your audience. So what you want is pathos should be 60% of your storytelling. And this starts at the beginning. So that's why the storytelling starts from the top of your pitch, because you want to get people immediately pulled in to your story, to your why, so that they can track with you for the rest of the pitch. So as long as you do that, let's make this a little bit longer. As long as you do that, people will track with you. So ethos should be 30%. And then logos should be 10%. And so this is the exact same thing as Simon Sinek's circle. So we want to start from the inside out. So we start from the emotions, getting them to buy into you, what you're doing, and the why. Why is this important? Why should anyone care? Then you move to establishing credibility. So that may be customer testimonials that say, hey, like, we really loved this service, it improved our lives, blah, blah, blah. You can start with a shocking statistic, whatever it is. But one of the things that you want to do, and that I saw a lot of you guys doing, is you don't want to preempt your start. Just start. Don't tell people, I'm going to ask you this question. Like, just ask it. Or, like, I'm going to tell you this crazy stat. You don't need to tell them that. Just put it out there and let that be the first thing that comes out of your mouth, so that you're starting with a really powerful hook that's getting them pulled into your why immediately. And ideally, your starting thing, your starting statement, phrase, whatever you want to say, should connect to your why. So now what we're going to do is you guys are going to put how you've been telling your story into 3 categories of pathos. So I want you to make this on your page. Ethos and logos. So you're gonna you can put just bullet points. You're gonna jot down what part of your story, what part of your pitch is pathos, what part of it is storytelling and tugging on people's heartstrings and getting them to connect with your why. Then in ethos, you're going to put what are the credibility. So that may be a UN report, it may be a stat, it may be customer testimonials, traction, and then the logos is the how. The what. So what is actually your plan? What are like the details and the specifics? Whatever it is that you're actually saying in your story, I want you to put those into the categories. So like, for example, like under pathos, we had like a way that we could tell a story about transport. How many people in the room have used Uber in the past week? Was it on time? Imagine having to wait 5 minutes to be picked up. You have to wait for an hour and a half to get transport to go to work. Would you like that? This is the reality of people in Kenya. How many people know how much they need to spend on their daily or weekly transport? Imagine if you missed a doctor's appointment because you didn't have transport. Or imagine you had to pay for a bus. You had to pay $2 for a bus and you got on and the driver charged you $4 instead. So like, actually put down, like, and this can actually help you think about different ways that you can be telling your story. So this is like open up your mind, like, okay, pathos, how can I tell this story in a different way? If what you think you have currently is working, put down what you have is working. But if not, use this as an imagination tool of, okay, how can I tell the story in a different way? Ethos. IBM said Nairobi had the highest pain point when it came to traffic, like the 5th highest in the world or something. There was a loss of X number of shillings in productivity. The traction, or our early users, I could put the traction that we got in our pilot under ethos to like back us up and give us credibility that it wasn't just something that we were saying. Logos, the what is an SMS app to textbook ride. So like, does that help you guys give a little bit more context and understanding? Yeah? Is that clear? How was that for you guys? Was it useful? Show of hands?
Yes.
Yeah? Did it make things more confusing or did it make it more helpful? Helpful. Awesome. So, one of the things, I know the reason I had you put these in categories was just so that you could think differently. But what we're trying to do, again, going back to, we're trying to connect the dots. So think of your story that you're developing, and hopefully out of that came some new ideas for how you can tell your story, how you can share the facts, the numbers. What we're doing is we're building a tapestry. So like think about fabric, how it has threads running through it. That's what you're doing with your story. So you don't want to make it like an isolated, you start with a story, then you go into like these random things and you forget about your story, and then suddenly either you end with your story or like the story just doesn't come anywhere. Like it just stays over here in the front. So what we want to do is, actually, can I have a couple people come over here and volunteer? 3, please. One more. You don't have to do anything, I promise. Okay, so you are our beginning, you are our middle, and you are the end. And I am the story. I'm like the little thread, right? So spread out, guys. So what you want to do with your story is you want to weave your story throughout your pitch. So the storyline starts over here at the beginning, and it comes over here, and it goes around to the middle. In the middle of the story, in the middle of your pitch, you're still talking about your story. If you start with a woman and, she's this mom who is not able to provide for her kids. Then in the middle of the story, when you're talking about your problem, okay, well, the problem is the mom is, I don't know. Maybe someone can give me an example. I'm not thinking on my feet very well. But the point is, in the middle of the story, whatever you're talking about in the middle, you don't want to drop your story, your narrative. So you weave through the middle, and then you weave through the end. So it's like a thread. Your story should run all the way through your pitch, okay? You don't want to just drop it off. You don't want to start your story, drop it off at the beginning. You don't want to have the story go from the beginning to the middle, and then you don't finish it. At the end, you're like, well, what happened to the mom? Did her kids get food? Did they get shelter? We don't know. We're left wondering. So you want to weave your story throughout your pitch. You guys can sit down. Thank you.